March 27th, 1977. A day that changed aviation forever. On a foggy runway in Tenerife, the world witnessed the deadliest plane crash in history. Two massive Boeing 747s, one from KLM, the other from Pan Am, collided in a fiery catastrophe, claiming 583 lives. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It wasn't an engine failure. It was a deadly chain reaction of miscommunication, ego, and human error. But how did it happen? And could it have been prevented? This is the terrifying story of the worst aviation disaster the world has ever seen. A routine flight turned deadly. It all started with two ordinary flights. The first was a KLM Boeing 747 departing from Amsterdam, packed with Dutch tourists heading for a vacation in the Canary Islands. The captain, Jacob van Zanten, a respected instructor and one of the airline's most senior pilots. The second flight, a Pan Am Boeing 747, was on a transatlantic journey from Los Angeles, making a stop in New York before heading to the same destination, Las Palmas. It was a charter flight, carrying mostly elderly American passengers, excited to start a cruise. Both flights were set to land at Las Palmas Airport. But then, disaster struck. A bomb threat changes everything. As both planes were approaching their destination, an explosion ripped through the Las Palmas Airport terminal. A terrorist group fighting for independence had planted a bomb, forcing authorities to shut down the airport. Suddenly, dozens of incoming flights, including KLM and Pan Am, were diverted to a small, outdated airport on the island of Tenerife. Tenerife's Los Rodeos airport wasn't equipped to handle so many planes at once. The tarmac was overcrowded, the taxiways were blocked, and aircraft were forced to use the only runway to taxi for takeoff. Then came another problem: the fog. Tenerife was notorious for its unpredictable weather. Within minutes, a thick, blinding fog rolled in, reducing visibility to almost zero. A dangerous decision. As both aircraft sat waiting for clearance, Captain Van Zanten of KLM made a crucial decision: to refuel the plane. Why? Because new airline regulations limited flight crew working hours. Van Zanten feared that if they delayed any longer, his crew would exceed their legal working time and would be forced to stay overnight, something he refused to accept. So, despite the crowded conditions, the KLM 747 sat on the tarmac for an extra 35 minutes, being refueled while other flights waited. What they didn't know? That delay would set the stage for one of the worst disasters in human history. The critical mistake. After refueling, the KLM plane was finally ready to take off. But here's where everything went horribly wrong. Because the taxiways were blocked, both planes had to use the runway to maneuver. The KLM plane was instructed to taxi to the end of the runway, turn around, and then await takeoff clearance. The Pan Am plane, still on the runway, was told to taxi down and exit at a designated turnoff. Sounds simple, right? Except for one deadly miscommunication. As the KLM plane turned around, ready for takeoff, the Pan Am 747 was still on the runway, but in the thick fog, neither plane could see the other. And then, the fatal mistake. "We are going." Captain Van Zanten mistakenly believed he had received takeoff clearance. Without full confirmation from air traffic control, he pushed the throttle forward and began speeding down the runway. Inside the Pan Am cockpit, Captain Victor Grubb suddenly saw a horrifying sight. "Oh God, he's coming!" Through the fog, the KLM 747 was charging toward them at full speed. Grubb screamed for full power, desperately trying to turn the massive aircraft off the runway. But it was too late. The KLM plane, now fully airborne, slammed into the Pan Am jet, its landing gear ripping through the upper deck like a knife through butter. Passengers inside the Pan Am had no idea what was coming. In an instant, engines, fuel tanks, and fuselages erupted into a massive fireball. The aftermath: 583 dead. KLM plane crashed back down onto the runway, skidding and exploding into flames. Everyone on board, 248 people, died instantly. On the Pan Am, some survived the initial impact, but within seconds, the entire aircraft was engulfed in fire. Desperate passengers jumped from the wings onto the tarmac, suffering severe burns and broken bones. Survivors described a scene of absolute horror: people screaming, flames everywhere, bodies trapped in the wreckage. In total, 583 people lost their lives. It remains the deadliest aviation disaster in history. Who was to blame? The investigation quickly pointed at one man, Captain Jacob van Zanten. He had mistakenly assumed clearance for takeoff. He ignored concerns from his crew. He accelerated down the runway, despite uncertainty. But it wasn't just one mistake. It was a combination of failures: poor communication between pilots and air traffic control, language barriers that led to misunderstandings, overcrowding at a small airport that wasn't designed for jumbo jets. After the tragedy, the aviation industry completely overhauled communication protocols. Pilots must now repeat all air traffic control instructions clearly. The word takeoff is only used when explicitly granting takeoff clearance. Crew members are now trained to challenge a captain's decision if they sense danger. These changes have saved countless lives since Tenerife. The lessons we must never forget. The Tenerife disaster was a wake-up call. It proved that in aviation, one moment of confusion can mean life or death. 583 people paid the price for one mistake, and yet it could have been prevented. So the next time you board a flight, remember this story. Because the safety protocols keeping you alive today, they were written in the blood of the victims of Tenerife. What do you think? Could this disaster have been prevented? What should have been done differently? Let us know in the comments. If you found this story shocking, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Because history must never repeat itself. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and see you next time.